Welcome to the Scale with Pros podcast with your host, myself, Cody Barton, the number one place to be if you want to build a business beyond yourself. And for all the resources we talk about in the show, make sure to head over to scalewithpros.com. So today I have a very special guest joining us, Mr. Jamil Damji. And, I'm not going to list off all of the different companies that, this man owns, but, I do have to say, at least this one, Keegley, the biggest dispo wholesale company in the United States. Jamil is the co-founder of that business. And beyond all of that, just an amazing human being and somebody that I've looked up to, for years as I was, starting my real estate journey and just everything that, he's been able to do from a professional side, but then also just an incredible human being that's just so grounded and humble. And so, for anyone listening, this is the podcast to listen to with Jamil because of who he is as a person and the successes, tied to that as well. But it's going to be super fun today. So, if you wouldn't mind, Jamil, just sharing a little bit of, where you've kind of got this start into your entrepreneurial journey, just a couple minutes, and then kind of like fast forward, compress it to, where you're at today and, what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you kindly for that introduction, Cody. I appreciate it. And you're also one of those people that I've watched excel and do so much in the business. So congrats for all of the things that you've got going on and continue to develop. Entrepreneurship was an interesting journey for me because I wasn't necessarily planning on being an entrepreneur. I went to college to become a doctor. I was actually trying to get into medical school, did a bachelor's of science in physiology, did really well in my undergrad, wrote the exam to get into medical school, had an interview and didn't get in. And so it was a incredible blow to, my paradigm at the time, because that's where my family said I needed to be. That's what I saw as my ticket out of our economic situation growing up. And so I think that's the crossroads, though, however, that really opened me up, because there was a reality that I had to digest, in that no matter how well I did in my grades, on my test scores, in the interview, I had put agency of my life in another person's hands. So somebody else got to decide for me where I was going to go. And that person, whoever that guy is or lady, they decided based off of a short conversation with me that I wasn't fit to enter medical school that year. And it's interesting because it could have been just because of how I look. It could have been my name. It could have been the way I did my hair. It could have been anything. Something could have just rubbed those people the wrong way. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, not you. And I realized at that time that I could continue living life where somebody else got to decide for me, or I could make a decision that moment and say, never again. And that was what happened. I made a decision to say, never again am I going to put my life into the hands of another human. If I fail, I'm going to fail by my own. If I succeed, I'm going to succeed on my own. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to leave it all out there. And then I have nobody to blame but me. I have no one to work on but me. And so that's really what kicked me off into entrepreneurship, because that's when I had self-determination as, the key concept in my life. And that led me on this incredible journey through different businesses, which ultimately led me to real estate, which I can see now based off of seeing everything from, 30,000 feet in hindsight, that there was a lot of synchronicity and things outside of my control that I believe like forces conspiring in my favor to get me to this spot. And I think all of us have access to that if we allow that to be a part of our lives. And so I'm really grateful for where entrepreneurship has taken me and all of the things that I've been able to do, but I'm just getting started.
Gosh, it's such a good story too, on like going and, going down this path to medical school. And I think a lot of people can relate, because it's like I know for me too, it's like we go down these paths in our life and we think this is going to be what I do for the rest of my life, or like this is my chosen path of what I'm going to be doing. And then there's this wall that goes up and it's like, oh, this might not be what I'm going to do or meant to be doing with my life. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I know for me, I'm like, in those times of transition, of those changes, like there's definitely like this identity crisis. And, I like what you said on like the the agency of not allowing, someone or a school or whatever it might be to determine that. And I think that's something that I know I struggle with, is that, identity, like getting wrapped up, especially in the business world. I'm like, I love the work I do, and I love business, and it's just so fun. And like, every business is like a puzzle to me to solve. And so it's super fun. But, how do you kind of work through that of like not getting so tied to that? Because I know I struggle with that, and I'm sure there's people that are listening that are like, they struggle with getting their identity tied up in that. And I know that's something that I still have work to do too.
Great question, Cody. I think that the fact of it is, last year I went through, and I can use my last year as a great example for it, but and I think this year I handled it with more grace than I have in the past, the difficulties. But last year I went through a situation where, business was kind of going a little different direction. My health had failed me. My neck basically rebroke. I had to get a pretty intrusive spinal surgery, and then my marriage dissolved, right? Like I go through all of this in this short amount of time, and I liken it to like a Christmas tree. Okay, so here I was, this Christmas tree in the living room. I have all these achievements in my life, right? I got these ornaments that I've got on my branches. Yeah, I'm a husband. I got this company. I got this company. I got the TV show. I got all this money. All these little things. And then somebody opens a window, and this big gust of wind comes, and it just shakes all the ornaments off your branches. And then they're all just shattered on the ground. And then you're like, oh, crap. I'm not a Christmas tree. I'm a tree in somebody's living room. What the hell am I doing here? And it's like, no matter what I do out in the world, where I've attached something outside of myself as a label for identity, I'm going to ultimately be dissatisfied with it, because it's going to change. Everything is temporary. That's the fact. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. I mean, I don't even look the same as I did 5 years ago, right? I look at pictures of me from 5 years ago, look at pictures of me today. I'm like, who the hell is this guy, right? Even the guy I was 5 years ago, completely different than the guy I am today. And so because I know that, everything changes, everything evolves, everything's just this dance, this like game of ebb and flow and up and down and waves and peaks and valleys, and there's metamorphoses and transformations that go on in the time that it's all going on, that I realize that if I'm going to hang my identity on something outside of myself, I ultimately will suffer. And so I had to turn inward. I had to go in to say, okay, well, what about me doesn't change? What about me is immutable, foundational? Once I got into tune with that, and I could tap back into the essence of me that was there when I was a kid, the same essence of me that was there through adolescence, young adulthood, early adulthood, into now middle age, there's this constant that was in the background, observing it all. And that there is me. Everything else is just the outfit I'm putting on for the moment. And so I have an easier time now with the whole identity issue of it, because I'm like, you know what? These are just costumes, right? Today I put the costume on of biggest wholesaler in the country. Tomorrow I put the costume on of something else. And it's going to be a costume until the day I disappear from this planet. And so bring on the costumes, man. Like, let's see what different versions I can be. Let's see how I can grow and evolve. And I know 5 years from now, I'm going to look different than I do today. And I'm going to be a different guy than I am today. And so getting attached to this version of me right now is pointless, because it's not going to be here very long. So, anybody out there who's listening to this saying, having an identity crisis and mourning a version of themselves that they're no longer, that's great, right? Fine, mourn it. Enjoy the misery that you need to feel right now and go through the grief. It's okay. We all have to do it. But then be hopeful that on the other side of that is a version of you that's even better than the one that you're leaving behind, because it's going to have had this experience, this growth, this challenge, and it's going to have built up this resilience to become a better, more transformed version of whatever you are. And that is, I think, what we're doing here.
Super, super interesting. I like the idea of like the costumes, and I mean even into the story of like the Christmas tree, and it's like gust of wind comes in and shakes them all up. And I feel like every 5 or 10 years, I feel like there's like major events, either personally or professionally, that happen, whether it's like family members, passing, or other things in family or life relationships, and or in business. I feel like that's like when I look back at the last 5 to 10 years, there's always like these major things that happen, and those are some areas that I have to continue to work on, letting some of those like past identities go. And like I like that costume. It's like, hey, like it's just something I'm, this is this is not who I am. It's like more of like this is like who I'm. I guess like what do you even call that? Like who I'm being today, or like what do you
It's
call
like
that?
it's the lens and the filter that you're experiencing life as right now, right? And
Yeah.
you call it a costume because it's almost like one, right? You imagine if you had red glasses, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just always had them from like young, and you never take them off, and everything that you would see out there would have that tint to it, right? And then one day somebody comes and takes those glasses off and puts blue ones on you, and you're like, what the is going on here? Everything's different. It's a completely different shade. It's all, I'm super shocked, but that's what it is. Like you're seeing life through a lens all the time. And that lens is your stories, that lens is your relationships, that lens is your self-concept, that lens is your experiences. And that lens is being shaped by the accumulation of all the things that are going on up until the point. And God forbid that your lens remain the same 5 years from now, because that means you didn't grow. That means you didn't really add anything to it. As you were pretty flat. And that sucks. That's not a good way to live, right? That's boring in and of itself. What fun is life if I'm the same guy I was when I was 15 or 20 or 30, right? So I think that it does take effort. Beyond effort, it takes like a surrender, right? Like you just got to be like, man, okay, fine, I'll release it. But knowing the next costume or the next identity, the next lens that you're going to put on is going to be even better than the one you got. There's the one you got right now, you've been wearing for a year and it stinks. So let's put something fresh on. Let's get out there and see what life looks like as this version.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to kind of segue and like, but bring that conversation into, okay, you're talking to the business owner that, they're like, man, like identity, like I'm just trying to keep it alive. I'm just trying to stay alive and just sell enough to pay my bill. I'm trying to get through it and, grow through it. And, there's that business owner that's, maybe doing a couple $100,000 a year, or maybe 500 or whatever they might be, low six figures. And they're trying to grow to 7 figures a year and beyond. And they don't want to, because I think, that's one of the things I always look to you is like, you're always, it's this like grounded element to you and like the way that you operate, even though you're involved in all these different businesses. But it's like, how does someone go to, from that to then like a multi 7 figure year business while not losing their soul in it all along the way, and like having that, being able to have like some of that, I don't say balance as far as like balance in life, but more of like the balanced out emotions through that process.
It's a lot of work. The truth is that I work on that every day. It can become seductive, right? Success is seductive. You can get seduced by your own bullshit to think that it's you that's doing it, that you're the reason, you're the cause, you're the catalyst of all of it. And then you can let that become your story, and then that can inflate your ego, and then that can become a game you play, right? But the thing I've learned is that whatever is not true finds a way to come to light. Always. It finds a way to expose itself. It finds a way to become known to you so that you can work through the deception, or work through whatever's not real, and then so that you can get to the next level. And so for me, I know that I'm talented at some level. I'm good at some things. I'm exceptional at others, but I'm still just one human being. But the magic of it all is that I do believe that I'm connected to all of them. I believe I'm connected to every single one, every single human being that exists. And I know that through that connection, I can bring to myself opportunities, situations, circumstances, and collaborators that are going to help me get to the next point, the next thing. So the practices that I've been very vocal about, I've been talking about them for a decade, but breath work, meditation, visualization, these things are some of the most grounding and transformative things that you can do in your life as an entrepreneur, even as parent, whatever you're experiencing right now. If there's stagnation, if you feel like, man, I could do so much better, well, let's get there. Let's get there in the imagination. Even the chair I'm sitting on right now existed in someone's head before it became my chair. So whatever you want in your life has to first exist in your mind so that you can go out and build it, right? So let's get to dreaming. Let's get to conceptualizing things and start stretching our imagination and ourselves into new horizons, and then watch how the universe will conspire with the right people to help you materialize that thing. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, on the visualization and that side, like I'm a big believer in it's like you can manifest anything that you want, and like you design your life, and we're the creators of our own story. And I used to think like it was cheesy, like when I was like first like getting into it. I'm like, what do you mean like manifest? I'm like, you just gotta go work and like do stuff, But it's like you said, it's like it has to be real in your mind before it's ever going to be real in like your actual reality.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, for like, what have you found, or like what are some of the things like on breathing, and then I'd love to hit on like the visualization side too, but are there any specific types of breathing that you like, or like you like recommending that work well for you? Like for me, I found box breathing is something that's been helpful for me. I'll do that nightly before I go to bed. Kind of helps. I don't know what it does, but for some reason I have more peace when I'm doing it. I don't know how that happens, but I'd feel it. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
There's a physiological effect that's happening when you do box breathing. You're actually down-regulating your sympathetic nervous system and up-regulating your parasympathetic nervous system. So you're switching off those aspects of your biology that are responsible for fight or flight, and you are up-regulating the more calm, the into that space of just, we're cool, we're safe, and I can be in myself without having to have stress. So that's what's happening when you're doing box breathing, and you're releasing neurochemicals and neurotransmitters that are accompanying that to create the feeling that you're getting. So it's actually what you're doing drugs, but your body is producing the drugs, which is great, right? Yeah. And so for me, the type of breathing that I love, I do it first thing in the morning, and can last 20 to 40 minutes depending on how much time I've got. But it's somatic breath work, and it's an active breathing process. It can be uncomfortable at times. You can get hand cramps, mouth cramps, feet cramps. It's your body really rejects it for the first 10 minutes of it, and then finally you get past that point, and then now you're just in this, like, you're almost being breathed rather than breathing. It's an interesting phenomenon. But what I do is I start with the breath work, and I know the chemical reactions that happen in my body as a result of that breath work. So what ends up happening is my body releases a tremendous amount of a chemical called beta carboline. And it also produces and releases serotonin, which then changes form to 5-methoxydimethyltryptamine, which is DMT. And so these chemicals all together put me in a state where the brain waves that are going on, in waking state, for me, shift from alpha to theta. Now, when I'm in a theta brainwave state, I'm open to suggestion. This is the brainwave that we're in when we're sleeping. This is the brainwave when we're in deep REM sleep. This is the brainwave pattern that we are when we're in hypnosis. And so when I get myself into that theta brainwave pattern, I then put on a guided meditation that helps me for whatever it is I'm looking to do. If I want to, manifest something, or if I want to increase the abundance in my life, or if I want to feel more gratitude, whatever that is, I put that meditation on then. And now in that really calm, relaxed state, right? I'm awake in the brain and relaxed in the body. Now I get to go and build. And there's this interesting place that you can slip into in that state. And it's been described as the void by some, the quantum field by others. But scientists and spiritualists alike have all agreed in its existence. And I can tell you it exists because I go there almost every day. And it's a place where everything exists at the same time right now. And it's a world of, it's a realm of potential, pure potential and energy. And it's in that realm that everything that becomes physically manifest happens first. So you can slip into that little place, and if you can bring yourself to the emotional state in which the thing that you're looking for would evoke, you can entangle yourself to that reality. And then when you come back into 3D world, you're now entangled with that reality, and that entanglement is what draws it to you.
It's so deep and it's so interesting. Like, so I've done because I believe that's the same type of breathing where, like at previous like masterminds, like where they've done the facilitated breath work, and that's the same style of breath work.
Yeah, it's like belly chest breathing.
Yeah, like the deep that one. I definitely don't do that every day, but I've went to some workshops and done that, and I've had some of those really interesting experiences, doing it for an hour and a half, and it feels like almost you like lose some baggage like after like doing that. I don't know. That was always the experience that I had. I guess so somatic that was it, right? Somatic breathing?
Yes.
Yeah, so that where I mean people probably just find that on YouTube, or is there somewhere that you go like you went to learn about how you actually do that yourself?
There's a great YouTube channel that I, happy to recommend. It's called Breathe with Sandy. And, just make sure you've got YouTube Pro so that you're not you don't get a commercial in the middle of it, because that's lame.
Yeah.
Spend the $9, guys, but get YouTube Pro and go subscribe to Breathe with Sandy. And he starts, he's got 5-minute ones, 10-minute ones, 15, 20, 30, 40, an hour. Start small, but start. And watch, the thing that you mentioned there, Cody, about the release of baggage. I mean, that's just blocked energy, right? You store trauma in your body. And a lot of us carry that for so many years. And then it manifests as pain. And then it becomes disease. And, and then it really hurts us. So before that happens, clear some of that out. Go out there. It's like taking out the trash. I mean, can you imagine if you lived in a house where instead of taking out the trash, we just stuffed the garbage down and then put more trash on top of it and stuffed it down and then put more. So
it's just hoard, like a hoarder's house.
Yeah. It would, how long until that place would just reek?
Days.
Right? Well, that's trauma in the body.
Yeah.
Right? It's stuck. It's stored there. And then we just push it down. And then we put more on top of it and push it down. And we put more on top of it, push it down and put more on top of it. It's the same thing. You got to take it out. And one of the ways to take it out is through awareness, through your attention, and through breathing. And so there's so much medicine in the body that we can create naturally with our own just tools that don't require us to go get a prescription, that don't require us to put ourselves in, weird spots in terms of our health. We're actually treating the cause of our issue instead of just treating the symptom, which is, pretty much what we do here in the West, unfortunately. And they had figured it out in the East, through Ayurvedic medicine and, some of the Eastern Chinese ways of looking at the body, acupuncture, acupressure. They're incredible techniques. And there's just so much available to us if we open our minds to it and then, take some of these practices and put them into our life. You can see dramatic changes very quickly. One of the things, if you take an antidepressant, that stuff doesn't even work for a month for some people, right? You got to take it for an entire month. And then you're like, how do you feel? Well, I don't want to kill myself, so I guess it's okay. Well, imagine if you didn't have to take a pill for that.
Yeah.
And imagine if you could just do it with your own body, with your own natural tools. I mean, how beautiful would that be? And we all have access to it. Now, again, I'm not sitting here telling anybody that you're wrong for taking medication. Do what your doctor and you see is best for you, for your therapy. But you owe it to yourself to try things. You owe it to yourself to try something that could be different or could be better. So why not?
Yeah. And I think too, like, I know a lot of business owners struggle with like, anxiety, depression. I mean, a lot of people in general. And I know for me, I was always too scared to take pills, like as far as, for anxiety or, anything like that. And through the deep work in like the pain and suffering sometimes of like going through, I used to have, in my early 20s, I had anxiety attacks and I would have them daily, like every day. And sometimes multiple times a day. And those are like gnarly. And I remember it was like all doctors want to do is like get these anxiety meds. You're probably depressed too. And I'm like, I'm not sad. I'm just like, I just feel like I'm having a heart attack randomly and it's scary. Like I'm not sad about it though. But, it's sad that that's like the thing that's just recommended. And I never, took like those daily anxiety meds that they wanted me to take. And I went that path of doing like the box breathing. Like that was what was able to help. But, I think like that shortcut that people, want to take the pills. And like for me, when I was going down that path and I had the anxiety attacks, it wasn't like I did breath work one day and then like I stopped having them. It was like over like a year. And it was like, oh, I went from having them every day and sometimes multiple times a day to like, oh, wow, like I only had 5 anxiety attacks last week. That's progress, and then 3, then, 2, and then every other week I would get some. And then like at very stressful occasions and events, I would get them randomly. And, then soon it's like I haven't had one. And since I lived at Cityscape in downtown Phoenix, actually was the last one I think I had. So it's been a few years, but it's hard, and like as business owners, like it's stressful, the things that we go through on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis of ups and downs. And, I don't think enough people, and that's why I like this conversation with you, is not enough people talk about that. And a lot of people assume that, just because people have a successful business, it means that, they're perfectly fine on their mental health and these other areas because they're just winning in business. So it must mean everything's great. And, I know that's something that, I still have to do that work to not have those things bubble up.
Big time, dude. And congratulations, by the way, for having such a great run of feeling better and not having had those attacks. That's a big step, and it's a huge accomplishment. And, you should be really proud of the fact that you've been able to do that for yourself. And you're right. I think first we have this like counterculture in entrepreneurship that, you got to be super tough. You got to work when you get home from your day job, and then work from 6 to midnight, 6 to 2, and work all weekend. And you got this, real, and I call it the Newtonian model, right? I'm going to work on the outside world to get what I want in order to see a result in this dimension. And it works. There's no doubt, right? And in that world, force equals mass times acceleration, right? If you want to, create a bigger force, you got to increase the mass and you got to move faster. Okay, that's the equation. But there's other equations, right? And when you think about it, there's E equals MC squared. And that's where energy equals mass. When have you ever seen energy become matter, become mass? And then when you actually go down that rabbit hole, you find out that actually everything that exists in the physical world exists in two forms, a wave and a particle. And the only thing that makes something a particle is consciousness. And then that sends you down a rabbit hole of what's consciousness. And then you get into what's fundamental about all of us, and it gets really interesting. And that's when you've got this blend in quantum mechanics, particle physics, energy, gravity, electromagnetism. And you can see that, oh my goodness, everything's really connected out here. And we do actually have so much more responsibility for what's happening in our lives. And we can change it all through specific types of thinking and specific types of emotional responses. And like anything, you know, in science, they teach you, and this is a true thing. If you take 2 drops of water and you put them like 6 inches apart from each other, do you know what happens in about half an hour?
Do they end up just combining, or?
Yeah, they attract. They come together, they combine. And that's because things of like nature attract each other. Same thing would happen if you put a drop of alcohol and a drop of water, because they both have an OH. They both have a like chemical property. They'll attract each other. Okay. Now, imagine if your greatest desires in life and business have a specific wave property to them. Okay, you could just say that it's this. It looks like this. This is the geometric pattern of my dreams. Well, if you can bring your vibrational state to match that pattern, then the inevitable collision between you and that situation is guaranteed. So it's really taking a step beyond the Newtonian model of force equals mass times acceleration and living in the realm of energy. And when you live in the realm of energy, now you've got so much more power available to you. You can do so many more things. And then now you can suspend logic, because how many people do you know who've done great things that could have figured out how they got there it all happens in these it all looks like chance. And if you kind of deconstruct, you're like, you know what? This guy would have never gotten here if this chance meeting didn't happen. And if this didn't happen, take for instance, just what's the beauty of my collab with Pacer, right? I mean, he sent me a DM 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And what if I hadn't known Josiah? There's so many pieces that are interwoven that create a whole world, a whole universe. And there's all these thousands of people getting affected by that. But these things had to have lined up prior in order for that to have occurred. And you and I have known each other a long time. You know Josiah and Hunter longer than I do. Just think of how incredibly difficult orchestrating that would be for our logical mind. Impossible. But there's there's a conductor out there moving all the actors on and off the stage, doing all the things. And we get to do one thing. We either get to get lost in the script, pretending that it's our job to write it, or we just get to show up and be the actor.
It's so interesting. And this, it's like a controversial topic in the entrepreneur world of going to, where you're talking about, it's like, yeah, work all day, then go home, and then work from 6 to 2 in the morning, wake up at 4, work, it's like you have that model. And then there's other people online that have these wake up at 6, go to the gym, meditate for an hour, journal for an hour, read for an hour. And it's like this 5-hour morning routine. And it's like people hate on that, but then other people hate on just working. It's like, where do you even find the middle ground on that? Because I feel like I sit kind of in the middle where I'm like, I don't have this crazy morning routine or these crazy routines, but I have certain habits in the routines that I have that help me move. But you have basically Alex Hormozy, which is drink coffee, work for 14 hours a day, don't be happy because who cares? And then there's, Jesse Itzler and these other people that have these crazy routines for hours. And, it's where do you even get in the middle of like what someone should do that's best for them.
I think what feels good the reason why Jesse Itzler is going to have the routine that he has is because it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to see, it's like, treat it as an experiment. For you, as you sit in the middle, treat it as an experiment. Maybe you add, one extra thing, like, okay, hey, Jamil said I should, or Jamil talked about visualization. Maybe I should, do the box breathing and then visualize, the future I'm looking for 5 minutes a day, and see how that plays out, and do that for 30 days. And then see, was there an effect? Did you get closer to what you're trying to accomplish just naturally, organically, through synchronicity and alignment? And if it did, then you can say, wow, that actually works. I'm going to do it more. And then you also say, okay, well, there's this other side, the Hormozi camp, right? Where you're like, I'm working 16 hours a day here and I'm freaking miserable. I feel like crap. And unfortunately, I get to this meeting where I'm supposed to wow people, but I'm so sleepy and I'm so grouchy that I F it up. Well, maybe that wasn't the right way. And I'm not hating on either of it. I think there's a truth to both. They both are valid, right? Yeah. But what resonates more with you? I think that's the thing. Look, I would love to wake up tomorrow morning and have Alex Hormozi's body, right? The guy's jacked.
He's freaking yoked.
He's yoked, right? And he's also a sweetheart. I've met him, and I can tell you that he's a genuine, humble, beautiful human being. He's a really, really nice guy. And he's super successful. And there's no taking away from what he's been able to accomplish. But I can also say that if I had to work the way that he does to achieve it, I'd be miserable. And I wouldn't enjoy it. And so I'd rather enjoy being, a decamillionaire than hate being like a 100 millionaire.
Yeah, no, it's a good conversation, because I think for me, like I've went through seasons too. Like I was going through, have you read the book, The Gap and the Gain?
No.
It's a really good book. I think you might like it. Dan Sullivan, him and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, they wrote it, but my business coach had me go through that earlier this year, and I kind of hated it, but also was like, it's kind of one of those books that like a coach is like, you should read this, and I'm like,
you're resistant to it. You're like, I don't need it.
Yeah. So I had a lot of resistance to reading it, because he's like, Cody, he's like, you live too much in the what you want versus like where you've come from. And, that's like the concept of like, the gap versus the gain. It's like, he's like, you need to like measure, back to where you are now versus like where you are now to where you want to go, because as high achievers, it's like the goalpost is always moving for like the next accomplishment. And I know for me, I definitely have struggled with like, okay, having a goal, hitting it, but then like already like right before the goal's hit, having the next goal already there. So it's like not even really feeling the goal actually ever hit. And like just a lot of the concept in the books, like having you do these like exercises where you're journaling and like looking back, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and like recognizing how far you've came versus like always measuring against like where you're trying to go. And that was a really good exercise. And part of it, one of the things that was interesting, and back to the seasons thing, was in my early 20s, from like 2021 to like 24, I have all these yellow notepads, and it's like stacked like for literally I journaled like religiously every morning, and I had this stack of yellow notepads of just like all of these, like, I am so happy and grateful now that this area of my life, I am so happy and grateful this area, it's just like all of that. And it's funny because like I was reading as part of this like gap in the gain exercise, I was like, oh, I have these old journals, and I was like going through, and I actually started crying as I was reading them, because I was like, holy crap, like so much of like what I wanted at 21, like I've surpassed so much further than I even, had written down. But yet here I am feeling this gap of like, I'm not where I want to be yet. My 21-year-old me was so, enthralled with achieving less than what I've achieved now. And so it's like this weird thing, but that was like a season of like journaling, and I'm like, man, like that was just, it's interesting going back, and like, I don't know, like that was something that, I went through in the last couple months, and I'm like, it's interesting to take inventory when you go back instead of always
Yeah,
measuring forward.
it really is. And it's, not only eye opening, but it gives perspective, right? Like you'd mentioned it brought tears to your eyes. It should, because you have done so much, and you've come so far, and we're so hard on ourselves. We don't give ourselves credit. And that's just I think that's a symptom of hustle culture, and just the human condition as well, right? Because we're just perpetually dissatisfied. And they've been talking about that from in scripture and in ancient books, like the human condition and our constant need for more, and our inability to be satisfied in just the moment is kind of what we've been struggling with since we got here. So it's the same story, different clothes.
How do you do that? Like to like be able to enjoy those moments more, and like sometimes, and this might just, I think this is a limiting belief sometimes, where I'm like, I'm such an analytical person. I'm just such a thinker. I'm always thinking about stuff like all the time, and like, and so I definitely, could be in the moment, or like I'm at, it's like at the beach, and I'm like really zoned in. I'm like, wow, this is an amazing moment. And then all of a sudden this like random thought, and then I'm like out in this other world of like this other idea that now I'm on, and then I'm not in the moment anymore. So what do you do to be able to be more in that moment, or like any suggestions that, to me and the people listening, on being not satisfied, because I don't like satisfied, but like, being content, but, patiently optimistic about increasing and improving areas of life?
I'm really grateful for how much better my life has turned out than what I had planned for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. And so knowing that life brings me a way better version than little me could think of, it makes me immensely excited about what's coming, because I know that if I get stuck in thinking what I want, my version of it is small. It's a fraction of what it could be. But if I'm just in it right now, if I can just train myself, and we have to train ourselves almost like you train a dog. I'm in the process of training a puppy right now, and it's constant repetition. And I was miserable last week because I was like, man, I didn't have the dog trainer over yet, and my
And
puppy,
how old is the pup?
she's 8 months.
Okay. Oh yeah, lots
And
of
she's
energy.
letting, now her bad behavior is infecting the other dog, and so he's becoming kind of a
The
poorly
butthole.
behaved. Yeah, and it's like I was at my wit's end with the whole thing. And but then I realized that the dog, just when I got a trainer came to visit me the other day, and we spent a couple of hours, and already the dog is better. Already the dog is like, okay, I have structure and I know what I'm supposed to do. And so even though the dog slips up, and even though it makes a mistake, we correct, and it try it again, and correct and try it again. And I think that we're just like that. We have an animal side and we have a creator side. And if we allow ourselves to sink into survival mode, then we're going to let the animal take over. And the animal is going to create all of these scenarios and all of these hallucinations of what could go wrong, because the animal wants to survive. Well, the other side of us wants to create. And so if we can just accept it when the weird thought pops into our head, and we catch it, okay, cool. I caught that weird thought. Let it go. You let it go, you clear it out, and there you are again. Right? And maybe you got to do it 100 times a day. Maybe you got to do it 1,000 times a day. I don't know. It depends on how much your mind chatters. But eventually, it slows down, and then you get to a point, and I'm not there yet, but I do know people who have just silent minds, quiet minds. I can get there for a period of time, but then the chatter starts again.
Yeah.
But there are people out there who are just silent, and they're so peaceful. They're so happy. those are the same people that are like, if you're like, hey, would you rather live in a mansion or a hut? They're like, neither. I'm just good on this rock.
Dude, it's so crazy because, and it's like that's something that, I was talking to Hayel about. I'm like, I'm reading this book right now by Dale Carnegie, it's like how to stop worrying and start living. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've not, but that sounds like a good one. I should read it.
Dude, it's been great. It's been really great for me specifically. Like, even though I don't really have anxiety attacks anymore, I still, have in the past had the anxiety things. And I say past because I'm not trying to continue to use the language of I'm an anxious person. Like, I don't want to use that language as much as possible because I don't want to continue to add that, yeah, to my life. And so that's been a really great book because there's like every chapter I've been reading, it's like giving me different exercises to go through. Like whenever I'm dealing with something, like, okay, I'm going to go to the book and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I told Hayel, I'm like, that book's staying on the coffee table as long as it takes for me not to feel like an anxious person. And, and again, like past tense, but not to feel like an anxious person. And so if that's a year, great. If that's 5 years, great. If that's the rest of my life, I'm just going to go to work on it. And that's do the work on it. And because I think that's been an area that I've just, once I got it, so, well, I'm not suffering from anxiety attacks, but I'm still, dealing with those anxieties. It's like, there's more work that could be done there. But that's definitely a good book that I'd recommend to people listening if they are dealing with that. And what's interesting too is like I look at, we get so many of these tendencies. Like I look at like my parents and like I know where I get my anxiety from. I'm like, that's my mom. Like that's my mom is so literally like that carbon copy of like the way that she is around anxiety was like the same. And I've improved significantly from where that was because I went to work on it and I've done work on this over the years. But it's interesting going through that journey, but to the point of like the quietness, because I've talked to my mom about this where, I tell her, I'm like, you should try the breathing and like, meditation and things. And she's like, oh, if I try to do it, like I just have all this chatter. And so I can't do it. It doesn't work for me. And it's funny because when you do meditate longer and you do the breathing, it gets quieter and quieter and quieter the more you do it, because it's like the muscle is being worked to like not have all of that chatter going. And so that's crazy. Like I can't imagine like, like the people that you're talking about that they're able to have no chatter. I'm like, because I can get that sometimes when I'm in that state, and then I'm just like in this just like feel like in this like flow state with nothing really happening, but then it's like comes back pretty fast after. It's like, all right, what am I doing today? What happened earlier? And so what are you doing to get more to that? I'm just curious. Is just the breath work that you're doing every morning, or is there anything else that you're doing?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And also try to bring in other acts of mindfulness and just mundane things like eating, walking, driving, right? Like I noticed in the past, and I still do this, but I'm getting better at it. But when I would eat, I'd almost black out. Like I would just eat and I wouldn't even remember the meal. Like by the time I became present again, it was all gone. And I'm like, that sucks, man. Like I don't even remember eating this thing. I don't even know what it tasted like. I was gone. And so like really chewing my food, really tasting the flavors, really, drinking my drink, really feeling all of that, like the different sensations that go with it, and being like richly immersed in it is a great way to quiet the mind and to be in the body and more present and more, have your being there. And you can do that in all little things, right? You do that walking, go outside, just walk around, take a look and listen for the sounds, feel your heel touch the sidewalk and then your toe and then your other heel and your other toe, and like just kind of be in it and notice all the things. Hear the wind rustling through the winds, hear the the lady screaming at their dog in in one of the backyards. Hear the lawnmower going off. Hear the landscapers blowing leaves in another area. Like, hear it all, and just be there and like take notice of it and be present for it. And then you start building that muscle of like being aware, being present, and it just gets more and more and longer and longer and longer. It's a lifelong thing. It's not something that I think you're going to master in a year and you'll say, oh man, I never daydream now, or I never hallucinate this like crazy outcome that's not real. It'll still happen, but it'll happen a lot less frequently.
I like that. Just, those intentional moments, like getting out and, just being in the space versus like, I think for me, it's like leaving my phone. Like, me and Hayel will take our dog on a walk, and I'm like, leave my phone at home, and like, so I'm just not able to, do the look at the phone for no reason, because it's just the habitual thing throughout the day to just look at your phone.
It's the worst. The phone is I think the biggest culprit that's degrading our attention span. And it's such a great tool as well, though. Like, it's such a like double-edged sword, how much it's given us in connectivity and access, but it's warped us and it's sucked away our attention. And so you got to be careful with it.
Yeah, I've found for me, I'm like, I have it on do not disturb 24/7 now. I just like, I don't get notifications from any apps. I don't get phone calls through. And that's been probably the best thing for me, because I'm like, I don't. Like, sometimes it's not great if I get a text that's important and it's been a couple hours, because I'm like, oh, I didn't see this. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I'll take that sometimes over the, getting overstimulated from like notifications of nonsense that I don't even need to be looking at.
Right.
As we're coming up, at the end of the hour here, I guess what would you say to, those people that like, and we went in this direction has been super fun to talk about, because usually it's like everything we always talk about on the Scale with Pros podcast is always just like tactical, like hiring or delegation or ops, or, how do you build teams and all of those things. But, this area of like mental health in business and the, just being able to set yourself up to live like a better quality of life has been really fun to talk about. So I don't even want to go to my normal questions at the end. So I'd more so like, what would you share with those people that are listening that, they are business owners, entrepreneurs, and they're wanting to grow, build a great life, make a lot of money, impact people, but live a great life while doing all of that? What comes to mind that you'd want to share as we, get close to wrapping up here?
Well, I think that you have the power inside of you to accomplish the most incredible things. And we've been conditioned to believe of ourselves to be small and powerless and at the mercy of everything outside. So I would say, if you really want to get to that place, take your power back, really take your power back and understand just who and what you are as a human being, and just how incredibly important what we are to this planet and our existence and to each other is, and how important you are in the grand scheme of it. You are not an accident. You are not just this, human being floating in the wind. You're divine, and you're necessary for so many things. And it's time that you step into it. If it's in your heart to have a 7-figure business, it's been placed there because you're supposed to do it. That's my belief. If it's in your heart, if the desire is there, then you're supposed to do it. So know that, and know that there's not only a path to it, but you don't need to know what that path is. You just have to give yourself the freedom of knowing that as long as you get up every day with the right intention and you take steps towards what you're looking to accomplish, that you're on your goal. And don't compare yourself to Cody, Pace, me, Brant, Steve Trang, anybody, and your heroes or anybody else out there. It's not a thing to compare yourself to. You got to compare yourself to you. every single day. Did I wake up and do a little bit better today than I did yesterday? And if I did, sleep well. And if I didn't, find out why and still sleep well.
I love that. Such a good message. And, just taking back the control and then just focusing on that, just doing a little bit better every day and continuing to move forward.
Those little things, man, you'll see they'll add up. And then a year from now, you'll be like, my goodness, look at where I've come. And just like Cody, you'll have tears in your eyes as well.
So good. Thank you so much, Jamil, for being here and sharing, your wisdom and your experience, with me and, all the listeners as well. And, before we wrap it up, anywhere that you'd want people to go to follow you, whether that's, any socials or anything that you'd want them to check out?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm on YouTube. You can find me at youtube.com/Jamil Damji and Instagram at JDAMJI. And if you want to chat, reach out, send me a DM. I'm happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for everybody listening, we'll see you in the next episode.